Hey guys, what is going on? It is Livid. Hope you're all doing very well today, and welcome back to another vendor reset video where I just show you everything that I think is worth buying from the vendors this week. This week, I feel like is a lot of overall substance and not enough quality, but there's still quite a bit of decent picks here, so let's go ahead and get started. We are starting off inside the terminal. This vendor is selling a Historian with Deadly. You guys know I like to recommend these specifically for PvP Deadeye. This gun can be a lot of fun, but I don't really recommend it for any other builds. You can just change Trained over to Prepared or even Capable, and then you're all set there. This vendor also has a really good SR7 suppressor with 19% critical hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 5% optimal range. This is one of those best in slot items where it really just slots into anything really well, but I do think that this does pair very well with Deadeye, specifically because it does not have headshot damage or critical hit chance, which is ignored by the Deadeye set, so anything that does not involve critical hit chance and headshot damage is usually good to slot in. That's already everything at the terminal, so we're going to head over to the advanced weaponry vendor in the base. They are selling a Navy MP5N with really good rolls. We have Fierce, Deadly, and Competent on the bottom slot. This is a really good one to throw on your PvP builds if you do not yet have the house, or if you're just looking for something different, this is just a really good option. I would change Fierce to Responsive or Unforgiving, and then you're all set here. This vendor also has a heavy magazine spring for sale with maxed out critical hit chance and damage, and then we have a 10.8 rate of fire roll. These magazines are best in slot for Lone Star, especially for the MG5s. Make sure you guys are using these in either PvE or PvP. Although if you are using the Big Owl, I do think that the extended magazines are better. Next, we're going to head over to the gear vendor inside the base. This vendor is selling a 264 electronics mod with 3% skill haste. These are really good to slot in for the majority of your skill-oriented builds, such as Reclaimer or Tactician. Just make sure you guys aren't going over the 50% skill haste cap. If you are going to put these on Reclaimer, just ensure that you're getting around 35% because the Reclaimer's support station will give you an extra 15, so that extra amount will be wasted. And finally, this vendor has our only damage to elite mod this week. It is pretty low. It's a 188 firearms on 3% damage to elites. Still, if you guys have missed out on the ones that we've had in previous weeks, make sure to buy these. Even if it's a low stat number, it's this extra 3% damage to elites that we're looking for. This will give you an overall total of 15% additional damage to elites, which is a very big chunk regardless. So I would still purchase these if you need these, and they will work for any build. We're done here, so we're going to head over to Camp Clinton. This vendor has a Cassidy shotgun for sale with Deadly and Capable. I would just change Capable over for Responsive or Unforgiving, ideally Responsive, and you will have a really good setup here for a PvP Cassidy Lone Star build. It is pretty fun. I would definitely recommend it. It's also not bad if you're wanting to use it in open world to get your shotgun kills done. This vendor also has a Historian with Deadly. You can just change Competent over to, again, Prepared or Capable, whichever talent you would prefer there. Works out very well. Heading down to the gear, this vendor has an inventive backpack with over 1200 electronics, and then we have a critical hit damage roll here that you would change to skill power, and then you have ammo capacity here on the last slot. This is a really good inventive. It's just that you would be stuck on ammo capacity instead of disrupt resistance. That's just a personal preference thing. If you want to go with ammo capacity, that is great too. And finally, this vendor is selling a decent pair of Savage gloves with over 1200 firearms, and then we have critical hit damage, SMG damage, and headshot damage here. This is a really good one to pair with the house. You can use these on your Predshi builds or Banshee, whatever you're thinking of. And you could just change headshot over to critical hit chance, and then you're all set. We're done here, so we're going to head over to the Last Call safe house, and this vendor is selling a compensator for us this week with 13.5 stability, 2% accuracy, and 4.5% optimal range. Any attachment involving stability is a really good option for Sentry's Call. Also, just a really good option in general for a lot of console players. They like to run stability mods because the recoil is harder to control. So if you are looking to mitigate something for that, this is a really good option. We do also have a really good one for sale in our first Dark Zone location at East 61st Street, so we're going to go check that out. And as I said, this vendor is selling a compensator as well, same stability number, but instead we have critical hit damage and headshot damage here. I do think that this one has far better rolls, but it is for Dark Zone credits, so it's up to your own discretion if you're wanting to purchase this or not. I do think that weapon attachments are far more lenient to purchase. They're usually only around 20k, which, don't get me wrong, is still a lot of Dark Zone credits, but I do think that it's far easier to obtain 21k Dark Zone credits versus gear or weapons being around 200 to like 500,000. Although our next Dark Zone location on Park Avenue is selling a weapon that I absolutely would not pass up. I think that this is the best item for sale this week, so let's go check it out. All right, we've made it over here to Dark Zone Park Avenue. And as I said, this vendor is selling an LVOA-C with Unforgiving, Adept, and Competent. You guys, this is a really good setup for PvP. Here you could just change Adept over to anything that you think would be of the best value. I think the best options are Responsive and Deadly, so you could purchase 1 or 2 of these depending on how many credits you have to spare. These ones are really important because the LVOA-C does not have a blueprint aside from the 204 gear score blueprint, so when it comes to 256, you guys are depending solely on drops and vendors, and this is one of the best LVOA-Cs that I've ever seen, so make sure you guys purchase this if you are dabbling a bit in PvP. Our next location is going to be DZ08 Saferoom. This vendor is selling a really good inventive backpack. You would just be changing the stamina over to an electronics roll. It already has skill power. It's a bit on the lower side, so that is going to take a little bit longer to optimize, but it does have disrupt resistance, which is my personal preference on an inventive backpack. However, it is Dark Zone credits. I normally don't ever recommend that you guys buy gear from the Dark Zone just because it's so expensive. I think that the one inside Cam Clinton is a far better choice. Although it is Phoenix credits, those are far easier to obtain than Dark Zone credits. I would also say, you guys, when it comes to gear, I would just craft it. Wait for the blueprints to come through, buy the blueprints, and craft the gear. I think that is a far better choice for value. However, while we are here, I do want to showcase these accomplished knee pads that already have an electronics roll of over 1200, critical hit damage here that you would roll off for skill power, and the reason why these are so important is because they do have damage to elites and increased kill XP here. The blind death resistance doesn't really matter as much, but the reason why these are so important is because you can use these to farm XP to obtain proficiency caches faster. I do have a build video showcasing this method, as well as the method itself in a separate video. I'll make sure to leave both of those linked in the description so you guys can go and check that out. We are done here, so we're going to head over to Dark Zone 5th Avenue. This vendor is selling an angled grip, which is also 13.5 stability, so we have a few stability options this week. Another good build where you can use these stability attachments is with Lone Star, either PvE or PvP. That is going to give you some better recoil control. Our next location is West 34th Street. This vendor is selling a 2% pulse critical hit chance mod. You can use these on your PvP builds specifically. I wouldn't really use them for anything else. Generally, the precision ability talent is going to give you far better value. It is going to be higher than the base pulse percentage, and sometimes it's even higher whenever you use pulse critical hit chance and damage mods. These also only apply to your own personal critical hit chance and damage. They don't apply to your teammates even if it's your pulse. So generally I think these are better swapped out for something like self-heal or even support station mods, but if you are wanting to run these, they are available this week. And our last stop is going to be West 42nd Street. This vendor has a C79 scope available. It has critical hit damage, headshot damage, and accuracy. Again, it's a critical hit damage site and it's a really high percentage, so I definitely recommend these for pretty much any build. They are one of those best in slot attachments that work well everywhere. There you guys have it. That is the vendor reset this week. Like I said, there seems to be a lot going on, but there's not too much value. I do think that LVOA-C is the best item for sale this week. If you are someone that engages quite a bit in PvP, definitely recommend picking it up because like I said, we don't have a 256 gear score blueprint, so getting really good ones is solely dependent on drops and vendors. And getting an LVOA-C in general from a vendor is pretty surprising, let alone a pretty good one as well. As always, make sure you guys are buying those damage to elite mods if you don't have any, but if there is nothing for you this week, there is always next week. I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Have a great rest of your day.